Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed, that's all who ever have. That amazing and wise saying was said by Margaret Mead. In this very moment, I could be that person, you can be that person, we can be that person. Homelessness is an issue that affects over 555,000 people nationwide, 65% sheltered and 35% unsheltered. Homelessness is an issue that affects people nationwide and not enough people care. The United States government says it would cost roughly $20 billion to end homelessness as a whole. And Jeff Bezos could end homelessness in America and still be the richest man alive. And as Drew Dudley said, if you help just one person, you've already changed the world, because there isn't one world. There's just 7 billion different understandings of it. Now, I guess where I'm going with this speech is, I'm going to show you how homelessness affects people nationwide and what we can do to make that change. Now, you're probably sitting there asking yourself, what is the issue and what contributes to homelessness as a whole? Well, before I get into that, let me ask you something. When you drive or walk past a homeless person, do you instantly think, oh yeah, they must have done drugs, or maybe they're just too lazy to get a job? Well, if you have, don't worry, because you aren't the only one. But let's see if that prediction is correct. According to the National Homelessness Organization, the main reason for homelessness is simply poverty. Homelessness and poverty are inextricably linked. People who are poor are frequently unable to pay for housing, food, childcare, healthcare, and education. And difficult decisions must be made when limited resources cover only some of those necessities. And usually it comes down to housing, which absorbs a high proportion of income tax that must be dropped. Now, this point brings me to a heartbreaking story of a mother, a father, and 2 children. Now, this family was living happily and worry-free until they weren't. A few years after the second child was born, the father tragically died in a car accident, and the mother was left alone with 2 kids, unemployed, and with no help. But fortunately, I have parents who do want to make that change. Now, my parents were able to just give her food, clothes, and most importantly, just a person for that family to have. Now, just by helping one person, my parents truly did change the world. Another reason that homelessness continues to increase is eroding work opportunities. The media reports of a growing economy and low employment mask a number of reasons why homelessness persists, and in some areas of the country is worsening. And I bet we can all relate to that, considering our current situation and the current unemployment rate in the United States, which is 6.7%. And another major reason is the cost of healthcare. I mean, I know, you're probably all so shocked. America is one of the only countries in the world without free healthcare. Like, come on, America. You can do it. I believe in you. Now, on to more bitter topics, which are domestic violence and addiction. And the relationship between addiction and homelessness is the one we will get more into, and it is one that is incredibly complex and extremely controversial. Now, while rates of alcohol and drug use are disproportionately high among the homeless population, the increase in homelessness cannot be explained simply by addiction alone, because most people who are addicted to drugs or alcohol don't actually become homeless, but people who are poor and addicted are at increased risk of homelessness. And addiction does increase the risk of displacement for the precariously housed, and in the absence of appropriate treatment, it may doom one's chances of getting housing once on the streets. Now, have you changed your mind just maybe a little bit? Well, if not, you can't change everyone's mind. Am I right or am I right? No? Okay. Tough crowd. Okay. Keep in mind, homelessness impacts all of us, whether or not we experience it ourselves. Well, homelessness is a public health problem. Without their own housing and the social status to use restrooms inside of businesses or other public places, homeless people have to relieve themselves outside. Now, these people lack access to health care, as I mentioned earlier, and often have chronic illnesses which are made worse by tough living conditions, sleeping outside in all weather, eating cheap, starchy foods, and being in close quarters with other unhealthy people. Now, homelessness is also an economic issue. People without housing are high consumers of public resources and generate expense rather than income for the community. Studies show that it can cost a community as much as $23,000 for a person to be chronically homeless for 1 year. That is paying for shelter stays, jail time, emergency room visits, and other expenses. And most importantly, homelessness is a human tragedy. Our own community members live in tents and under bridges, vulnerable to inclement weather and violence, stripped of dignity and our collective respect. This far in, you're probably sitting there confused, asking yourself, why aren't other people helping and what can I do to help? Well, why don't people help? It's simply because for many, ignoring the homeless is easier than acknowledging them. Mark Horvath, founder of the video blog Invisible People, summarizes it best. He says, "It's not that people are bad, but if we make eye contact or engage in conversation with them, then we have to admit they exist and that we might have a basic human need to care. But it's so much easier to simply close our eyes and shield our hearts from their existence." Now, due to the constant denial the homeless receive when asking for help, most admit to feeling invisible to the people around them. And many people have the irrational fear that the homeless may hurt or harass them. This quote from CNN will hopefully put that fear to rest. A person who is homeless is no more likely to be a criminal than a housed person, with one legal exception: camping illegally. People who are homeless break that law just by being homeless. Poverty is an ugly reality, and when we're faced with it, any of us choose to look away, not wanting to accept a reality that doesn't align with our own. Well, this is where you come in. How can you do to make that change? Well, I can tell you right now, it doesn't take as much as you think. Well, I have a quick reminder before we get into all that. Just keep in mind, most of the chronically homeless people are usually suffering from a mental or physical disability. And while many feel like giving money to the homeless is a handout, all they truly need is to be recognized as people who need a hand up to get out of poverty and go into the right direction. Now, how can you help? To help the homeless, instead of giving them spare change, buy them a cup of coffee, food, or bottled water. This takes the burden off knowing where your money actually ends up. And this shows the person that you actually care to take time out of your day to stand in line and place an order, rather than just digging through your spare change. You taking the time out of your day can help them go into the right direction. And by simply smiling at them and making eye contact, you can have a positive impact on them. And there are so many practical ways you can help the homeless. Making cards to promote nearby shelters, donate clothes, volunteer your time, fundraise, and do your research. Other than that, use the most important tool you have, your voice. So, how is everyone feeling about being those few caring people who change the world? Good? Good? Because I know I am. Homelessness is an issue that is nationwide, but it is not one that is unfixable. There are endless reasons to why a person can end up in that situation, and there are endless ways you can get them out of it. The homeless community has been silenced and ignored for too long, and it is time to say that enough is enough. Now, no more just sitting and listening. Go be those caring people and go change the world.